Morning, everyone. Coffee here. Sorry I can't be with you. Obviously, I'm in Dominican Republic still. And I'm flying back today, actually, as you see this. So I wanted to drop this little segment in to start our event, give you some insights into some of the feedback we gave around the first game against Kenya, which I think will be interesting. So let me share my screen. Here we go. Should be sharing there. And then you should see the pitch here. Okay, so a couple of excuse me, couple of objectives. We wanted to talk, and this is the first game of the tournament, so we wanted to talk here about in possession. England in possession is what we're going to talk about. And I think some of it relates to things we can use, obviously, in our possession-based play and our transition to defense, especially at home. All right. So let me start with this one. This clip is about having a central versus a wide focus. Okay. Excuse the internet. The internet's not great, but the picture should level out. We're in white, tracking from left to right, obviously. Kenya building up from the back and giving the ball away. And then we win the ball back, and then it's a question of control. Now, what we're about to see, I think, is something you might see in your teams from time to time in terms of players forcing the ball forward. What we've talked to the players about on this game is, if you look in the middle, we played with more of a it was a 4-4-2, but we dropped a striker in to make it a 4-3-3. They played with a strict 4-4-2. So we had a 3v2 advantage in the middle. We didn't really make the most of it during the game. And all of these clips come from the last 20 minutes of the match. Okay, we won the game 2-0, but we weren't particularly happy with the way that we went about it in terms of in possession, right? And this is one of the reasons. I think sometimes players have a preference to use their dominant foot. Obviously, our right back here is a right-footed player, but you can see on the green line here that there's an element of extreme technical range where you can get the ball in the middle. But even at this level, we've got to encourage players sometimes to see it and do it, right? What we want to do here is attack the space between the two holding midfielders, the red line you can see. And we've got numbers to do that in the middle, but it would take the player using a non-dominant foot just to turn the ball around the corner into the middle. And we've talked about how prioritizing the center of the pitch is better than the wide areas because the goal is in the center of the pitch, obviously. Yeah. Obviously not always the case. When a team is narrow and compact against us, then we would look to go around or over. But in this instance, you can see there's a gap, the white line between two players that we could flick the ball around or turn the ball around the corner. And then ideally under these circumstances, because we possess the ball so much, and because obviously at club as well, we're hugely interested in possession-based football, we move players around, we switch the ball, and then it creates these overloads in the center of the pitch as teams get stretched wider, okay? So what we would want is the green pass, but ultimately what we got a lot in the opening game was something different. You see, you're trying to turn and play it around the corner and the ball goes out, okay? So that's a bit of the central or wide focus. Now, the reason for the central focus was our advantage in the middle. You'll see our striker here dropping off the front. Really, this is tough, isn't it? Try and get a young player to watch the play as it develops in the penalty box and react as the ball comes out. We often see young players like come back late or not get to the ball. Maybe it's a concentration piece, maybe it's an experience piece. But obviously at this level, the players are good both mentally and physically. And you can see her reacting to the transition here, getting to the ball first, and then securing it for us. Now, from that element, we would say now we're in control. So this is good possession. So the first thing we have to do is get into good possession. Now that we're in good possession, we can dictate where the ball goes. And that's a phase that, I think possession-based teams look for. It can look different. How Man City secure possession and get into good possession is different to how, say we do, or say our JFC teams will. But ultimately, the first thing we've got to do to stop it being a game of transition is to find a way to just slow it down a second and move the ball away from the area that was won back in, okay? Excuse me. So this is the interesting stuff. So obviously you can see there a back four in red, two holding midfielders or two midfielders, and then almost a front four, a left winger, a right winger, and two strikers. So they're almost like a 4-2-4. And they obviously felt they had to get more pressure on us at the back because we're a good team in possession. And if they just sat back, we'd just move them around the pitch and eventually break them down, right? So we have three centre midfielders, you can see in the triangle here, around there too. What we didn't do well with 20 minutes to go, we spoke to the players about, is we didn't find that advantage and use that advantage, okay? So I'll show you some examples of that now. First of all, we've got a two player. These two players you can see here, they're both playing as sixes, and their job is to come and link the units. So you'll see one player come and do that here, not get it. It's a good job from the Kenyans, to be fair. That cover shadow you can see there in the red, their positioning and their distances between each other actually puts a doubt in your mind whether or not you can play it. And also, this centre back is looking at big pressure coming from this centre midfielder as well. So that's probably not a pass that we're going to look to play. We probably could do it, but it would be a risk. So they've done a good job there in terms of screening the first one. But as we switch it, obviously the other six knows the same job as well. But now the opportunities start to open. In fairness to Kenya again, they've done a good job of screening the other six as well, stopping her getting the ball direct from the centre back. So we need another pass to move it and change the angles again. You still see we have that 3v2 advantage in the middle. Look, there's our triangle, but we can't quite find a way yet to get the ball in there. So that's fine. You don't have to force it in there. So we go a little wider. Now, the pass in the middle, centre back to centre back, is different to the pass from centre back to left back. The left back pass really stretches the opposition. So they're strong in the centre, because when you have a 4-4-2 structure, you guys know this, it's quite easy to defend the middle. The hard part is when teams move you side to side. So as that pass goes out wide now, you'll see our holding midfielder, the six in the white circle now. She's the free player. She needs to come into a more extreme angle along the green line and offer an opportunity to receive the ball from the fullback. Excuse me, because the other two midfielders are picked up in this instance, yeah? We don't quite get it there. Instead, we go down the side, and now Kenya's happy because now they have player-for-player coverage all over the pitch. You see their right back is picking up our wide player. You see our two midfielders are picked up. You see, well, pretty much everywhere you can see a white line, one of our players is picked up. So if we go around in this kind of slow fashion, they're quite happy. Right? They know they can't stop us doing everything we want with the ball. And this might be like when we play against teams who are better than us in the leagues, right? Especially younger age groups. We know we're not going to stop the other team from having the ball. We know we're not necessarily going to take it from them all the time, but we might take a note from Kenya here in terms of the way they've stopped the ball going into the midfielders, maybe. So that kind of fizzles out, that one. They've used their 4-4-2, their cover angle distances to keep the ball away from us. Now, what that does for them is it gives them hope. And in the last 20 minutes, we're winning the game, but Kenya were never quite beaten. They were never out of it. They still counterattacked against us for the last kind of, especially 10 minutes, because they felt if they get one, they might be able to make a draw, right? And it was because we weren't really ruthless with our play that they managed to stay in the game mentally, at least, okay? And flip side, we might need to do this at times when we play against teams who are stronger than us or dominate the ball. If we can keep it to 1-0, 2-0, and we can give our players the opportunity to stay in the game, they might feel also emboldened in the last 20 minutes of matches as well. So 2-0 down half time doesn't have to be a disaster. All right, so let's get into this a little bit more detail then. So again, all these clips of the last 20 minutes of the match. In game, obviously, we have microphones to the stand and everything. We can get messages onto the pitch, but in game, we realized that this was happening, obviously, and now we've tried to create a bigger space between our two holding players and our centre forward, who is going to come and make the 3v2 in the middle, right? So that player at the top of the triangle there, the free player, she's playing as a number 9, but she's a midfielder, and she's going to drop into the midfield areas. But the bigger space we create between these three players, the harder it is for them to cover horizontally and vertically. So the information might not necessarily be to our centre backs to sharpen up or liven up or pass quicker. It might be a tactical bit of information to the unit in front to start operating differently so that the Kenya structure can't be as good as it's been for the last kind of 5, 10, 15 minutes, all right? We'll show you some examples of that now. Same pass we saw before. We can't go through, so this time we'll go around, and that's a good decision. We create some width, we pop it around the corner, We find that free player, and now all of a sudden we're behind them. Whereas before we were going around them and their shape stayed intact. You know, after 2 or 3 times of this happening and seeing this happen on the pitch, obviously it's like it's like, okay, we tried A, we'll try B, we'll try C. So we find a way to find the free player. And then as we found the free player more and more, we often got straight through to goal because, with the greatest respect to Kenya, there's a big difference between the world rankings of England and Kenya, yeah? Now, we didn't score every single time, but ultimately we were talking about the build-up today, all right? One of the areas I wanted to highlight for us is counter-pressing, and I know we do this well at times, but if we're going to make a move as a club to be in a much more, not heavily defensive focus, but a better defending team as a club methodology, we've got to talk about how we're going to do that, right? And counter-pressing is one really good way to do that. If the ball turns over really high up the pitch like this, we might as well have 4 or 5 seconds where we just get after the ball, because the worst thing can happen is we don't get it and we'll end up running back anyway. They're a long way from the goal. So immediately on the transition, whoever the closest 2 or 3 players are encouraged to go and counter press the ball. They don't have to win it back, but what they're going to do in this example is try and regain the ball, or more likely force them into a mistake. And you see that here. Good counter pressure from the players in and around the ball, chase them down into the corner flag there. It's an intent to go and counter press and then force into a mistake, which means we get a throw in high up the pitch, right? Pretty simple stuff, counter pressing, yeah. All right. Look what happens when we find the free player again. So this is the tactical problem that we had. And then their solution was to drop a centre forward onto our free player. It was about 15 minutes to go in the match here. We're winning, I think 2-0 at the time. But ultimately, they've got to stop us from doing this now because we've figured it out and we've begun to play in the middle again. So they dropped a centre forward onto our midfielder to try and create a 3v3. That was their solve, okay? Nobody stays the same and just lets you do what you want, do they? So this centre forward here dropped off the front and followed the midfielder into the midfield area. But we didn't feel like she would follow it into these extreme areas. So we encouraged the midfielder then to go into the back line or onto the right wing and try and drag this player around the pitch, right? And you can see their centre forward has gone, yeah, okay, I can follow you to a point, but I'm not going in there with you, because she knows she has responsibilities to press higher up the field as well. So again, their fix worked for a couple of seconds or a minute, but it didn't stand up against the test of what we could do tactically then to counter their fix, if you like, if you see what I'm saying, right? So you'll see the centre forward go back up to the front, try and create that 4-4-2 or 4-2-4 again. See her on the halfway line now. And now, again, we've got that principle of a wide along a big triangle with the free player slightly offside. But at this point, she can't be picked up. The 2 centre midfielders here, then they can't pick her up because this one's looking after this one and this one's looking after this one. The fullback is occupied by the wide player and the centre back is occupied by the centre forward. So now she's just cleverly drifting into a position where she can get the ball. What we've got to allow the players to do now is just find her. And that might be easier at international level than it is at club level. But ultimately, it's just a principle we're talking about, how you use this advantage in midfield and how you counteract what the opposition have tried to do to stop you from using your advantage, right? So you see here, longer ball, in it comes. We now have a 2v1 against their fullback. And at this level, that's obviously enough to get in and create an opportunity, right? Doesn't quite happen for us again, but you see how it works. All right, let's get through this. So similar principle. We got to make more of our advantage. That's the idea. Passes to fullbacks, stretch the pitch. Back into centre backs, move the ball on 2-touch, move the ball quickly across the pitch. Here's our 3v2 example again. The more we keep it at the back, the more we drag their centre forwards away. So we know that their centre forward wants to drop in to create the 3v3 now. So we have to keep the ball. Now it's a game of opposites, isn't it? We know what they want to do now, so we have to keep the ball away. We have to at least initiate the press. Now, this is the scary bit at times, especially in youth football, isn't it? If we keep the ball at the back and initiate the forwards onto us, we might make a mistake and they might score a goal. But ultimately, we have to give the players opportunity to experience what it's like to play under pressure, because you can see here in an international match how important it is to be able to have that. And that could be a college game. It could be, it could be an under 17 or 19 game for club where it gets super serious. Like, we've got to get the players, even if they make mistakes, we've got to give them the experience. Now, what we need to do on the flip side here, now that they've got their cover and balance back up front, is we need to encourage our sixes now to move into more extreme angles. So they have to go wider, or they have to go, I would say at like a 45-degree angle from the ball. So if you'd say that's a 90-degree angle there, they probably need to get out into this space and push the fullback on. And then that tactic of having the two screening centre forwards won't be able to stop us playing into midfield. But it took us a while, obviously, to try and get that message across. So we didn't quite get that right. But there's other ways to do it as well. You can switch it fast like this. Look, draw the centre back out because she thinks she can get it. Quick touch, quick play, and you've played around it as well. It's not just one way to skin a cat, as they say. As soon as that's happened, now we're in 3v2. We've got our three midfielders in this box. They've got two. Now we need to make the most of it. We can't just kick it wide at this point. We've got to engage and obviously play and use our advantage at this point, right? Now, I say we've got to. That would be the tactical idea. But ultimately, you can see here now there's a key pass we could play. So that gets taken over by the idea of we can slip somebody in here. Now it's all about the winger's run. You can see the right winger down here is already into a running pattern. She's really strong. She's really fast. She's read the situation. She's probably got the run on the fullback. And there's a big gap of maybe 15 yards between the left back and centre back, which means we can split the middle. And when it comes to key passing, one of the most important things I think we teach the young players is to hit the middle of the gap, because that's something that even as you go up the levels doesn't happen all the time. The best players, your De Bruyne's, your Silvers, these kinds of Bernardo Silvers, these kinds of players, they hit the middle of the gap. And I've drawn a little graphic here. If you play the ball there, it's going through. What we do here is play the ball down the orange line and it gets intercepted by the defender. And I was thinking that's a really good graphic to show everybody about how we can teach our players, especially kind of 13, 14, 15, how we can talk to them about key passing. Because they can make mistakes like this. This is not going to cost us a goal. But ultimately, if they get better at this, it's really going to benefit their career. So we have an individual development program where we would sit down with this player now and show this clip and then use a couple of examples from pro game and really work for probably a couple of months on when she gets in this situation again, how can we change this from orange to green? We don't quite have the resources at club to do that, do we? But it's the principle of how we want to get that across, right? You see, here's the pass. Look, it wasn't in the middle. They nick it and the momentum is killed. Now we get it back because, again, with the greatest respect to Kenya, if we were playing Spain or Japan, we wouldn't get that ball back, right? So we know that as well. Same principle, higher at the pitch. You can see our 3v2 advantage. This time we're a bit more flat, but ultimately it's still our 3 against their 2. So we've done a better job here of getting the ball in. Unfortunately for us, they've gone on an inside press now and tried to keep us on the other side of the pitch because our free player now is out the game. She's over here in the wide area. We can't get it to her unless we have really clever, slick combination play. But ideally, they've done a good job here. So if we find ourselves defending against the situation where we've got 2 in the middle and they've got 3, inside press, standing outside of the player here and pressing inside, as you see this player here, is again a good tactic. We can force the 2 in midfield to play 2v2 now. So that tactic there has now created a 2v2 situation where it was 3v2. And that's how you nullify the numerical superiority in the middle, yeah? So we can't use our free player in this example. And then the ball goes out the other side. If we had, we would have created a 2v1 look. If we got the ball here to our withdrawn forward, we could have had a 2v1 in the wide area. So it's about how we create these advantages and how we use these advantages. But sometimes, obviously, the opposition will take your advantage away, okay? So it's not panicking. We didn't get it this time. We're clocking it. We're obviously tagging it. We're getting the message on the pitch. This is what we want. But ultimately, we know that, the next 2 or 3 attacks, we will find that free player again, okay? Game's a little messy here now. And it's this kind of mess that gives Kenya hope because we never really took the ball back and then controlled it, moved it to the other side of the pitch. Now Kenya still feel that they get energy from winning the ball back so quickly in a couple of seconds, right? It goes to us, it goes to them, it goes to us, it goes to them. But ultimately they feel emboldened by that, right? And that was the story of the last kind of 8 or 9 minutes until we, really killed the game off. And these some examples of them feeding off that energy, right? So that's a better pass, gets us in control. Now we're in good possession. We can fan out a little. We can get our shape going. We look like more of a 4-2-3-1 now, as you can see. We're trying to move them around the pitch a little. Find that free player in the middle. Find one of those sixes, as you see. So that's our ideal first line pass in there. They're dropping a lot deeper now because they realize they can't quite stop us playing. So if we can't get it into the center forward in this example, and we feel like we can't find a player, then our next tactic is to drop the wide player from the wing into this pocket here. Now, the question is, do we need to do that in this circumstance? Because we can probably get the ball into midfield. We can definitely get it into fullback and then into midfield. So we should be making a better decision here. But ultimately, we go for that pocket player. We don't quite get it right. The pass isn't the best. Their cover and shadow is probably stopping us now from getting into the middle. Ultimately, we give the ball away and Kenya go on a little break. And that's where they get the energy from. You know, there's a lot of counter pressing from them. What we need to do here is not secure the ball now and fan out again. So we have to have two strategies, I think, as a possession-based team. We have to either know when we're going to keep it or when we're going to hurt them with it, right? Sometimes you want to keep it and go backwards. In this example, we should go forwards. A little tickle around the corner first, leaves this player with open space, and then we've just got to find the ball. And we're not saying to players, you have to do this, and you have to do that, and then you have to do this. We're just showing them, look, if you tickle that around the corner, you can now have free open grass to eventually play into this 1v1 situation you can see developing out here. And it could be we play out to their feet and she goes wide, or it could be we split the middle, go through the gap again, the middle of the gap, and we put this player in on goal. But ultimately, this was a time where we should have been braver and gone forward as opposed to keeping the ball or playing too many passes, right? And backwards we go. The result of going backwards is they get in their shape again. And yes, we still have a 2v1 in the middle, so we could still use that in here, right? And we try to, but this is a poor pass. It's too slow. It gets, it gets us under all kind of pressure. And now again, they're emboldened to press us and go after us. And, they might not be a great team, but they're certainly athletic and they certainly have desire. And again, they push us all the way back under those circumstances, right? Now, sorry, it was 1-0 at the time. So we do kill the game off with the goal. We make it 2-0. And again, don't forget, all this stuff is within the last, I would say, 23 minutes of the match. So highlighted their shape here, 4-4-2 again, as you can see. We're a lot wider. We're set up to play. We want to, we fully believe we could pass around this team, obviously. Again, highlighted the middle. So there's the pass we should be playing into the first player. And again, for us, you can think about your teams, like who is your first line pass? Who is your six? Who comes to get it? How do they come to get it? If we're going to build up from the back, and we might make mistakes doing this, but ultimately we got to have a player who's probably responsible, or two players responsible for actually receiving the ball from the back four, right? And I'm sure you already have this nailed down. But ultimately, if we get that right, we have a chance to build, don't we? We don't use the right option. We go wide. So that means we have to come back. Now, again, it's even more obvious now, with 2v1 in the middle of the pitch. So we should really be more clinical here. We go over and the player slips. And then as a result, we pick the ball up. We take advantage of the slip. Obviously, these players are superb physically as well. It's a great drive, a great run, and a really, really good finish. And ultimately, the game is 2-0, it's over. But from a tactical perspective, we got a little lucky there, for honest. We didn't really we didn't really build that goal. But the reason I left that in is that's okay. We don't have to be purists. We don't have to be like it's not always, even though we think of it like a game of chess, we also need to take the big moments in matches. We need to take the times when the opposition slip. We need to force the mistakes, and then we need to take advantage, especially when we're playing against better teams. Right? We could be England in this example, playing against some of the teams we play against where we dominate the ball, and we could be Kenya. We could be playing against teams at the top of the league that we're not going to see much of the ball from. So we need to take advantage of those moments, obviously. Yeah. So again, even after the goal, our passing was a little sloppy in terms of, controlling it and moving it away. The pace of our passing wasn't great. We talked to the players about mixing up the tempo. We should get out on one touch as opposed to two. We should drive now. We have a 5v4 advantage on the right side of the pitch here. And if I stop it, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. and they only have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see how we've created numerical superiority now on the whole side of the pitch. That is the trigger for our centre-backs to engage, take somebody out the game, and then eventually use the, what would it become? It would become a 4v3 further up the field, yeah? We should take advantage of this. We should be making a final third entry or even getting a shot on goal when we have this kind of numerical superiority. But again, is it first game of the tournament, a little bit sloppy, first World Cup for a lot of these players. Some of them are only 16 years of age. So we don't quite have that killer instinct at the start of the tournament. We're matched up in the middle now. There's no no numerical superiority in the middle. So we need to go to the outside, but we don't engage. We got to encourage our centre-backs to be good at this. They got to engage. Instead of releasing that ball from 8 or 9 yards away from the Kenyan player, the Kenyan player can read that. They can then start a press, and that's a completely different scenario. I see this all the time in my team. Centre-backs, players release the ball when really they don't need to. There's no reason for us to release this here. Nobody's coming forward. There's no intent to come forward. She's 8 or 9 yards away, so we should continue to drive and at least drive at her and pop it off. You know this stuff, but we don't do a good job here, and as a result, we give the opposition hope. Now, if you remember, just a couple of seconds ago, we drew a line down the middle of the pitch. We had a 5v4 advantage on the right side. Now we're 3v3. So they've managed to take our advantage away and, get neutral numbers. And we're probably, in all honesty, we're probably still good enough to play through this. But again, later on in the tournament against Japan, against Spain, that's not going to be the case, right? We do actually give it away and they actually counter. And what's really interesting here is, and this is for 2 reasons, they actually got us now from a situation where we were 5-4 up and in control. They are now on the transition now. They are counter-attacking us with a collective counter-attack through 2v3 down. So again, a better team now drives down these red lines and really makes it difficult for our 2 defending players. With the greatest respect again to Kenya, they're not able to take advantage of this moment. But we were very conscious at the start of the tournament. We don't want to give this situation again to a team that we see later on, in the knockout rounds, for example. And then for us, on the flip side for club, we could defend for a long time. We could try and stay in shape, but then we got to make the most of these moments. We got to design training sessions around these moments. What could a training session look like? What kind of skill practice or small-sided game could we develop where we're actually now going at 2 players and a goalkeeper? Or if you're lucky enough to have half a pitch, we could design a practice that looks exactly like this, couldn't we? We could have a Tuesday night or a Monday night where, there's a rondo going on. Sorry, I'm conscious of taking it back too quickly because I don't want to lose a clip. Here we go. We could have a rondo going on here, like near, it doesn't have to be on the halfway line, but we could have a 3v3 game. Imagine you drew a box around these guys here, 20 by 20, 25 by 25, 3v3, make 2 passes, break out the box. These 3 are not allowed to recover out the box. Yeah, maybe that's the practice. Or the defending team win it back and off they go. And then what we could do is we could have recovery runners. We could have these 4 runners start on the halfway line, and they're only allowed to leave the halfway line when the player touches the ball. So it recreates this advantage. They are running back, so you haven't got time to do whatever you want, but ultimately it recreates the game demands as close as you possibly could for this example. And then after that, obviously, you just attack the goal, play offside, and encourage the red players to go and get behind rather than try and combine in front, right? But this is the idea of taking moments in matches and developing training sessions around what you're going to face on a Saturday. Kenny would only expect to get maybe 2 or 3 or 4 breaks in the whole game, but if you scored from one of them, you'd have a massive impact on the result, wouldn't you? Okay, last couple. So when we did get it right, again, there's that controlling pass, that release valve, I call it. You can see the shape. Kenyan's still in that 4-4-2. It's a little jagged. It's not great, but it's there. What our withdrawn striker's done a really good job of here is finding the pocket and standing in the pocket. So the first thing you want to try and do is stand in the pocket. If they don't take that away, you just take what you're given. We obviously find a good pass in. She receives it. She's obviously a great player. She turns, she runs forward, and then again, we're in the final third and we should probably score here. So it's as simple as finding that free player sometimes. And, what we're trying to do really is certainly what I'm thinking of with my young boys is they're 14s. I'm thinking, can I encourage my attacking mid just to be in that space? And can I encourage him to find him? And if the ball bounces off him or he doesn't turn as quick or he doesn't create this chance, that's fine with me at this age. I'm just trying to show him a picture and get him comfortable about playing in pockets. And you know, ultimately, we might not win games, and we might not ever have this picture where we end up with a shot on goal. But if a 14-year-old knows how to play in between the units and receive the ball on the half turn, I can keep working technically in the first 10, 15 minutes of my practice about, like, you know, here's repetition. Like, let's just set that up in a technical practice, loads of repetition, play the ball into him, let him turn, play the ball into him, let him turn. And then later on in my session, I can take it into a half pitch practice or a small sided game where he gets a chance to do this. If he gets to, you know, the 17s and he can do this stuff, then that's the idea, isn't it? And then the 17s will refine him and polish the diamond. But at 14, I've got to show him the examples of what can be done, and I've got to try and give him the space to make those mistakes on that turn, because, you know, even though these girls are 16, these are the best players who can play for England in the world, aren't they? So we have to allow for that flexibility, I think. And then again, just on us a little bit, we're fueling their hope a little bit with poor choices. Look, we were really pleased that we got this information onto the pitch, and we really started to take the game back away from Kenya towards the end of it. But ultimately, these are simple choices. And if we can encourage players at any level to look up, scan the pitch, they should see this. You know, there's plenty of space in front. There's nobody stopping us playing. The Kenyan back four is obviously intact. Right winger, centre back, left back. The gap here between centre midfield, left back. The gap here between centre midfield and left back is huge. And it, you know, again, with the greatest respect to them, this is like 80th minute of the match, 85th minute of the match. You know, they've been trying their best. They've been drilled. They've been doing really well. Like, we didn't blow Kenya away, but ultimately there's going to be gaps, and we should be thinking here, well, if we play out here now, look, we have a 2v1 situation against their fullback. But we don't see this. We go the other side, and obviously our decisions now fuel their hope a little bit, because they still feel emboldened that they can steal it and hit us on the counter with their pace, and off they go again. So this is really just about being really clinical. How that translates back to us for club is, the idea is we just, you know, decision making, like, in the moment. And this is why it's so difficult when the parents are screaming. If you see one of our players get in that position, as you just saw there, and someone's telling them, go wide, go left, go right, go take your space, go in behind, kick it, run, like, they're never going to develop the opportunity to see that and experience and actually figure out, you know, what they're doing. Because if their head's down, they look up and they just do what they're told, they never ever look side to side. And it'll really hurt them. It'll really hurt them in their development post 15, 16. You might not necessarily see it in the younger age groups. We might, you know, I might win under 14 level. I might win 5 games in a row by telling the players what to do. I'm sure I could get my players to go where they need to go and have a huge advantage over most teams we play. But ultimately, I'm doing them a massive disservice, because when they get to 15, 16, 17s, and the game is too fast for that, and there's too much processing going on, and they don't have the skills, all of a sudden now they'll just fade away and they won't achieve their potential. And this is the sad part, they might still be really good, they might still be effective, but they're not going to get to their potential level. And that's something I think we've got to certainly consider about when it comes to, you know, how we coach in the game and how we do things. And obviously today's session, there's a couple of sessions today where we're going to show you coaching in the game. You know, you're going to see that in real life today, as opposed to, you know, making players do what we want, and for those exact reasons. Okay. All right, last one. There's a couple of good bits on this. So again, that forward we talked about. Look how she's checked the shoulder here and look behind. This is really important. We see this at youth level a lot. People don't do this. They don't know what's coming and they get robbed, right? They get the ball stolen from them. She knows what's coming from behind her because she's looked. And then what she's done with that information is she's gone, okay, I got to brace for impact and I got to back up into you. So what you're going to see here is not just the look, not just good hold up play, but then the technical ability to close that gap and step back and make sure that when the buffeting does come, you don't lose the ball there. Now, that is not by accident. That is by design. And that's something we can teach all of our forwards, isn't it? And you probably already are. But it's a good example of how technical information feeds with tactical information, and how our practices, we could easily do a practice where someone throws a ball in, defender comes from behind, and we just have players drop back and, you know, and work on this skill, you know, and then it comes out in the game, right? But this is obviously, this player is actually only 14 years old. She's playing in the U17s, but she's only 14 years old. She's at Man City. She's a really good potential player. She drops the ball off again there. Now our 3 players in between the units, you can see again. It's just a question of, can we find her on the ground? And then she's obviously good enough. The weight of that pass is excellent, and we're in again, right? And whether we score or not is not really the point. The point is, how did we secure the ball at centre forward? How did we ensure that Once we'd secured it, we dropped it off by the release valve, and then were we good enough to find the free player? That's really what the middle, the tactics in the middle were all about in terms of using our numerical superiority. Now, again, a final point, whether we are the team dominating possession in the games you play where you feel like we can win or we can dominate the ball, then, we're talking more like England here. And when we play against teams, really importantly, that we think might dominate possession against us, and I think in my league of 14, I think there's probably 7 teams that we won't have the ball against. There's probably 6 teams we will have the ball against. And the teams we will have the ball against, we try and play a bit more with the ball. The teams we won't, we try and play a bit more on the counter-attack and be a bit more solid in defense, right? And, if we don't beat a team in the top 6, I react differently with the players. I'm not upset. I'm not, I'm not expecting that. I obviously try and get them to win. But ultimately, we're in a little mini league with the kind of 7 teams at the bottom, and I think we're 8th right now or 9th. So we're like top 3 in that mini league. And that's, that's how we approach it sort of when you play against those teams. Okay. I hope that was a little bit interesting anyway. It was supposed to be a football, chalk talk type thing. Obviously happy to chat about it. When I see you guys, if you want to reach out, and I've got a bunch of resources and stuff, I'm happy to share. We'll put a lot of it on the website under the Coach's Corner. I just want to highlight again and remind everybody about the Body Mind Performance course that's up on the Coaching Corner now. You can just go on there, log on. There's a few modules on there on, self-regulation, emotional intelligence, psychology. It's really, really interesting. I've been through it myself. So don't forget that's up there. You can do that whenever you want. It's completely optional. It's not mandatory, but it's a really useful resource. So I hope you enjoy the rest of this evening, going out onto the field. You've got some great deliverers coming up. Sorry I couldn't be there with you. I'm actually going to be on a plane flying back as you see this, but I'll be back middle part of next week and look forward to hearing from anybody. Thanks, guys.